though dry. All round were Jeloveks, well away on Milk Plus, Velozet, and Synthesmic, and Drenkrom, and other vestiges which take you far, far, far away from this wicked and real world, into the land of Vidi Bog and all his holy angels and saints in your left sabog, with lights bursting and spurting all over your mosque. What we were beating was the old Moloko with knives in it, as we used to say, to sharpen you up and make you ready for a bit of dirty 20 to 1. But I've told you all that before. We were dressed in the height of fashion, which, in those days, was these very wide trousers and a very loose, black, shiny, leather-like jerkin over an open-necked shirt with a like scarf tucked in. At this time, too, it was the height of fashion to use the old britva on the gulliver, so that most of the gulliver was like bald, and there was hair only on the sides. But it was always the same on the old nogas, real horror show, bulgy big boots for kicking litzos in. What's it going to be then, eh? I was like the oldest of we four, and they all looked up to me as their leader. But I got the idea sometimes that Bully had the thought in his gulliver that he would like to take over, this being because of his bigness and the grumpy gallows that bellowed out of him when he was on the warpath. But all the ideas came from your rumble, oh my brothers. And also there was this vest that I had been famous and had my picture and articles and all that gal in the gazettas. Also, I had by far the best job of all we four, being in the National Gramodisc Archives on the music side, with the real horror show Carmen full of pretty Polly at the week's end, and a lot of nice free discs for my own malinky self on the side. This evening in the Korova there was a fair number of X and Tistas and Dvochkas and Malchiks smacking and beating away and cutting through their govoriting and the burbling of the in-the-landers with their Gorgor Fellowtook and the worm sprays in Philtip slaughter balls. In all that gal you could sushi a pop disc on the stereo, this being Ned Ajimota singing That Day, Yeah, That Day. At the counter there were 3 debauchkas dressed in the height of Netsat fashion, that is to say, long, uncombed hair dyed white and full screwties sticking out a metre or more, and very, very tight short skirts with all the frothy white underneath. And Polly kept saying, "Hey, get in there, we could, 3 of us. Old Len is not interested. Leave old Len to be with his God." And Len kept saying, "Yorbles, Yorbles, where is the spirit of all for one and one for all, eh, boy?" Suddenly I felt both very, very tired and also full of tingly energy, and I said, "Out, out, 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 out." "Where to?" said Rick, who had a litso like a frog's. "Oh, just Viddy, what's doing in the grate outside," I said. But somehow, my brothers, I felt very bored and a bit hopeless, and I had been feeling that a lot these days. So I turned to the Jelovek So, when we met a story Vic coming away from a news kiosk where he had been committing a gazetta, I said to Polly, "All right, Polly boy, thou canst if thou wishest." More and more these days, I had been just giving the orders and standing back to pity them being carried out. So Polly cracked into him, and the other two tripped him and kicked at him, smacking away while he was down, and then let him crawl off to where he lived, like whimpering to himself. Polly said, "How about a nice yummy glass of something to keep out the cold, oh Alex?" For we were not too far from the Duke of New York. The other two nodded, yes, 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 but all looked at me to pity whether that was all right. I nodded too, and so off we ittied. Inside the snug there were these starry teastas, or sharps, or babuchkas, you will remember from the beginning, and they all started on there. "Evening, lads. God bless you, boys. Best lads living, that's what you are." Waiting for us to say, "What's it going to be, girls?" Polly rang the call, and a waiter came in, rubbing his rougers on his grassy apron. "Gutter on the table, droogies," said Polly, pulling out his own rattling and chinking mound of tang. "Scotchmen for us, and the same for the old babuchkas, eh?" And then I said, to hell, let them buy their own. I didn't know what it was, but these last days I had become like mean. There had come into my Gulliver tore it up into teeny, tiny pieces and let it fall like a bit of snow onto the floor. The whiskey came in then, and the story Babuchkas said, "Good health, lads. God bless you, boys. The best lads living. That's what you are, and all that, gal." And one of them, who was all lines and wrinkles and no zubies in her shrunken old rod, said, "Don't tear up money, son. If you don't need it, give it to them as does," which was very bold and forward of her. But Rick said, "Money that was not, oh Babuchka. It was a picture of a dear little itsy witsy bitsy bit of a baby." I said, "I'm getting just that bit tired, that I am. It's you who's the babies, you lot, scoffing and grinning, and all you can do is smack and give people bulgy, cowardly tall jocks when they can't give them back." Bully said, "Well now, we always thought it was you who was the king of that, and also the teacher." "Not well, that's the trouble with thou, old droogie." I pitied this sloppy glass of beer I had on the table in front of me, and felt like all vomity within. So I went, and poured all the frothy cal all over the floor. One of the starry tistas said, "Waste not, want not." I said, "Look, droogies, listen. Tonight I am somehow just not in the mood. I know not why or how it is, but there it is. You three go your own ways this nightwise, leaving me out. Tomorrow we shall meet, same place, same time, me hoping to be like a lot better." "Oh," said Bully, "right sorry I am." But you could pity a like gleam in his glasses, because now he would be taking over for this Nochi. Power, power. Everybody like wants power. "We can postpone till tomorrow," said Bully. What we in mind had, namely that bit of shop cresting in Gagarin Street. Flip horror show takings there, Droog, for the having. "No," I said, "you postpone nothing. You just carry on in your own like style." "Now," I said, "I easy off," and I got up from my chair. "Where to, then?" asked Rick. "That know I not," I said. "Just be on like my own and sort things out." You could pity the old Babuchkas were real puzzled at me going out like that, and like all morose, and not the bright and smacking Mally Chickywick you will remember. But I said, to hell, and scattered out all on my oddy knocky into the street. It was dark, and there was a wind sharp as a nosh getting up, and there were very, very few loodies about. There were these patrol cars with brutal roses inside them, like cruising about, and now and then, on the corner, you could pity a couple of very young Millicents stamping against the bitchy cold and letting out steam breath on the winter air. Oh, my brothers. I suppose, really, a lot of the old ultra-violence and cresting was dying out now, the roses being so brutal with who they got, though it had become like a fight between naughty nadsats and the roses, who could be more scotty with the nose and the britva and the stick and even the gun. But what was the matter with me these days was that I didn't care much. It was like something soft getting into me, and I could not pony why. What I wanted these violins and the trombones and kettle drums. There was something happening inside me, and I wondered if it was like some disease, or if it was what they had done to me that time, upsetting my Gulliver, and perhaps going to make me real Basumi. So, thinking like this, with my Gulliver bent and my rookers stuck in my trouser garments, I walked the town for others, and at last I began to feel very tired, and also in great need of a nice bolshy kasha of milky chai. Thinking about this chai, I got a sudden picture of me sitting before a bolshy fire in an armchair, beating away at this chai. And what was funny and very, very strange was that I seemed to have turned into a very starry Chelovek, about 70 years old, because I could pity my own volos, which was very grey, and I also had whiskers, and these were very grey too. I could pity myself as an old man sitting by a fire, and then the picture vanished, but it was very strange. I came to one of these tea and coffee mestos, brothers, and I could pity through the long, long window that it was full of very dull loodies, like ordinary, who had these very patient and expressionless litzos, and would do no harm to no one, all sitting there and eating, quietly, and beating away at their nice, harmless chai and coffee. I itted inside and went up to the counter and bought me a nice hot chai with plenty of Moloko. Then I itted to one of these tables and sat down to beat it. There was a young couple at this table, beating and smoking filter tip cancers and eating and smacking very quietly between themselves. But I took no notice of them and just went on beating away and dreaming and wondering what it was in me that was changing and what was going to happen to me. But I pitied that the Dvochka at this table, who was with this Chelovek, was real horror show, not the sort you would want to throw down and give the old in out to, but with a horror show plot and litzo and a smiling grot and very, very fair volos and all that gal, and then the Vec with her, who had a hat on his Gulliver and had his litzo turned away from me, swiveled round to pity the big bolshy clock they had on the wall in this mesto, and then I pitied who he was, and then he pitied who I was. It was Pete, one Impossible, impossible, giggled again, and said to Pete, Did you used to talk like that too? Well, said Pete, and he smiled. I'm nearly 20, old enough to be hitched, and it's been 2 months already. You were very young and very forward, remember? Well, I like gaped still. Over this get canine old droogie. Pete married. Well, well, well. We have a small flat, said Pete. I'm earning very small money at State Marine Insurance, but things will get better, that I know. And Georgina here. What again is that name? I said, rod still open like Bazumi. Pete's wife, brothers, like giggled again. Georgina, said Pete. Georgina works too, typing, you know. We manage. I could not, brothers, take my glasses off him, really. He was like grown up now, with a grown up colossus and all. You must, said Pete. Come and see us sometime. You still, he said, look very young, despite all your terrible experiences. Yes. We've read all about them. But, of course, you are very young still. 18, I said. Just gone. 18, eh? Said Pete. As old as that. Well. Now, he said, we have to be going. And he gave this Georgina of his a loving look and pressed one of her rookers between his, and she gave him one of those looks back. Oh, my brothers. Yes, said Pete, turning back to me. We're off to a little party at Greg's. Greg, I said. Oh, of course, said Pete. You wouldn't know Greg, would you? Greg is after your time. While you were away, Greg came into the picture. He runs little parties, you know. Mostly wine cup and word games, but very nice, very pleasant, you know. Harmless, if you see what I mean. Yes, I said. Harmless. Yes. I pity that real horror show. And this Georgina Devotchka giggled again at my Slovos. And then these two idioted off to their bonny word games at this Greg's, whoever he was. I was left all on my oddie knocky with my milky chai, which was getting cold now, thinking and wondering. Perhaps that was it, I kept thinking. Perhaps I was getting too old for the sort of cheesney I had been leading, brothers. I was 18 now, just gone. 18 was not a young age. At 18, old Wolfgang Amadeus had written concertos and symphonies and operas and oratorios and all that cal. No, not cal. Heavenly music. And then there was old Felix M. with his Midsummer Night's Dream Overture. And there were others. And there was this, French poet, set by old Benji Britt, who had done all his best poetry by the age of 15. Oh, my brothers. Arthur, his first name. 18 was not all that young an age then. But what was I going to do? Walking the dark, chill bastards of winter streets, after idioting off from this chai and coffee mesto, I kept visioning visions, like these cartoons in the gazettas. stop him, nor would he be able to stop his own son, brothers. And so it would itty on to like the end of the world, round and round and round, like some Boshi, gigantic, like Chelovek, like Bog himself, by courtesy of Korova Milk Bar, turning and turning and turning a Vani Krasny orange in his gigantic rookers. But first of all, brothers, there was this fest of finding some Tvochka or other who would be a mother to this son. I would have to start on that tomorrow, I kept thinking. That was something like new to do. That was something I would have to get started on. A new, like, chapter beginning. That's what it's going to be then, brothers, as I come to the like end of this tale. You have been everywhere with your little Droog Alex, suffering with him, and you have varied some of the most grasny brachnies old Bog ever made, all on to your old Droog Alex. And all it was that I was young. But now, as I end this story, brothers, I am not young, not no longer. Oh no, Alex like groweth up. Oh yes. But where I itty now, oh my brothers, is all on my Ori Nuggy, where you cannot go. Tomorrow is all like sweet flowers and the turning funny earth and the story and the old Luna